Here's to Sonic 3. Here's to it surpassing every project I've discussed in this video and end this trilogy on a high note. Hope that kid gets capped though. How do we tell him? So, here we are. After spending all of 2024 claiming it as the year of Shadow just to hype up this movie, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the third Sonic movie and the finale of this trilogy, is finally here. And man was I shit scared going in. While I was hyped as hell due to all the promotional material I saw which made the film look incredible, I still was quite skeptical even as soon as going into the cinema. I won't go over my thoughts too much on the previous films as I've already got a massive retrospective looking over them all, but to more or less give you the cliff notes, Sonic 1, while having a rocky lead up to its release, ended up being actually pretty decent. Although outside of Sonic and Robotnik, there really isn't any elements from the video games here which they're seemingly saving for the sequels. Sonic 2, whilst giving me more game elements such as Tails, Knuckles, the Master Emerald, and hell, even a final battle between Super Sonic and the Death Egg robot. Although as a film, it's definitely a lot worse, with worse pacing, character arcs not really fulfilled, and overall just coming off a lot more disjointed than the first film. And the Knuckles show, while seemingly being the most hated overall, actually won me over to becoming my favourite. After you get over the fact that Knuckles is most likely heavily sidelined for the sake of a budget, there is still a good show here that's on that regular show level and where it's just a mundane plot but some batshit stuff is just gonna happen in between it all.
Just do it, man. I'm
Now, based on my thoughts on the previous movies and deciding to rewatch them just days before movie 3 as to remind myself what they're like, again, whilst excited, I was still pretty worried. I mean, hell, I was hyped as hell for Sonic 2, hoping it to be the best Sonic movie of all time, and still I was left a little unsatisfied. Now that we're tackling elements from the adventure games, and more specifically Shadow and his arc from Adventure 2, one of Sonic's best stories in my opinion, I was worried the ending result would feel a bit all over the place. We'd waste too much time on some random human nonsense, you know, Wedding Scene 2 Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, and needing to speed through stuff like Shadow's backstory and all the emotional moments, overall leading me to not care at all when it's all said and done. But nonetheless, on December 21st, when it premiered in the UK, I sat down and watched this enigma of a movie. And what did I think? Oh, thank God they nailed it. Sonic 3 was just everything to me, peak characterization from everyone, insane Dragon Ball last level fight scenes, and is still able to hit those same emotional beats like the game it's adapting. Not to say I don't have issues, I definitely do, but compared to what's come before, this shit just comes off as so rewarding. If to get started anywhere, it'd just be to establish that Sonic Movie 3 isn't just Sonic Adventure 2 the movie. Of course Adventure 2 is the movie's main source material, it's adapting Shadow's backstory, Gerald and Maria, the Eclipse canon, you get the idea, but due to the fact that these movies and their lore are so disconnected from the video games they're adapting, it's understandable to make some changes to it, which they very much did. Biggest to note is the additional and removal of some characters, with both Amy Rose and Rouge the Bat just flat out not being here whilst playing key roles during SA2's story. I imagine it was for purely streamlining the story a bit. If to add them to the story, this would be their introduction to the movie universe, which I feel similar to Tails in movie 2 will lead to one character getting the short end of the stick and come off underutilized, and in their place we instead get Gerald Robotnik. I'll touch on him as a character later, but due to his connections with Shadow, when developing one, you're kinda developing both due to how connected their pasts are with one another. Like, no need to explain two separate backstories when both characters share one. I think as well it's just fun to see the changes the filmmakers have made, allowing people who've already played Adventure 2 to just be a surprise to someone who just knows the bare essentials of Sonic. But to start discussing actual pieces of the movie, nowhere is really better to start than the characters themselves. Starting off with none other than Sonic, and he's majorly been upgraded, especially near the end of the movie. At his worst, he still has some quips and jokes that I just think are kinda cringeworthy, like calling Shadow Hot Topic in 2024, really? And the joke about Rockwell calling them aliens just felt really unnecessary and awkward. And he does that, well, that just happened joke 4 separate times.
Now come on, you can't take us all at once.
Okay, he took us all at once.
Do you really think we'd be that stupid? Yep, we're that stupid. Nice magic marble, real scary. Ah, that actually is real scary.
You're not gonna make it!
I'm gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it!
It's weird because of out of all the things movie 2 did wrong, it perfected this joke.
Close one.
But again, due to the situations throughout the film, and especially during the third act, we really do just get to see this guy locked the fuck in. Like when forced to work with Robotnik just to get some answers on Shadow, throughout the whole thing, the dude's just agitated. Like whenever Sonic's forced to work with Eggman in the games, he really doesn't care that much. The worst we've ever got out of Game Sonic is in Lost World, where he just acted like, whatever. But he's just so pissed about working with him here, not letting him out of his sight, ignoring most of his jokes, and Dorcupine, really clever. It's just so interesting to see how different he is from his game counterpart. And like I said, during the third act, this dude just goes crazy, almost starting a fight with Knuckles just to find out where the Master Emerald is. And when Sonic finally reaches this movie's version of the Ark, dude just rips Shadow out of it, just wanting to fucking kill the guy. If anything, it reminds me of a video about Sonic Movie 2 made by a YouTuber, It's Nick for short, where he brings up an effect he dubs the Tom Holland effect. To explain it, it's more or less a pattern between MCU Spider-Man and movie Sonic and the way they act, especially during their fight scenes. During the first and second act, no matter how many films or how much progression as a character they've got, no matter what, these guys are just fumbling, losing, and often needing to retreat against that film's main antagonist. Until, like I said, the third act rolls around and they start going crazy, showing off some next level skills and abilities. And in this film, it's never been more similar, especially with MCU Spidey with his third film, No Way Home. Like honestly, it is just the exact same setup. Both during their third acts, they may have already lost a parental figure. No matter how pacifistic they've been to the antagonist, maybe trying to spare them, they've entirely lost their cool, with the final fight between them and the murderer to feel quite brutal. Usually with both sides not holding back, but before finishing that final blow, reality sets back in, leading them to be spared. Now, this isn't me saying Jeff Fowler's some wiggly worm who just stole the plot beats from No Way Home, but what this does do is just show how similar these characters are written, with them both being quite quippy and charming, but having some deep-seated anger in them that could become deadly if enough pain was in their soul. And one last thing I want to add, as I feel I made an error in my previous video. It was when predicting movie 3 and where it was going to take movie Sonic, specifically as a character. Although by the end of the third film, I imagine we'll have a Sonic more in line with the one we've come to know, similar to what Prime attempted to do. Yeah, I don't really know what made me think of that, but I doubt movie Sonic will truly become anything like Game Sonic. As if he ever did, I feel like it would be betraying what these films have already set up. Like, whenever I see a fan theory like, at the end of Sonic 4, Sonic's gonna return to his home dimension. Like, he might return for the sake of the plot, but he will never just leave Tom and Maddie. The whole point of these films is that they're a found family. Hell, that goes for all of Team Sonic. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles have already declared this place as their home. They're never really gonna leave. Like, I'm not saying he won't be more like his game counterpart in the future, like more cocky or confident, but he will never truly be Game Sonic. There will always be a difference. And I also feel that goes both ways. Game Sonic will never just become movie Sonic. The only thing they'll ever get is small things like adding electric effects and shit like that. Tails and Knuckles, whilst not having as much focus as Sonic, Shadow, or even Robotnik, actually ended up being the unsung goats of movie 3. Tails, whilst having a great performance by Colleen O'Shaughnessy, his game actress, had very little to do and was very underutilized, as movie 2's main focus was on Knuckles. Here in movie 3 though, it is so much better. Dropping the weird fanboy angle that Sonic 2 went for and actually just having the three as friends, which, just on a side note, is what this film does tremendously well. These three, compared to any game since like Sonic Heroes, actually feel like friends. Hell, in this case, practically brothers. The way they skydive like it's one planned synchronized dance, to the way they banter with one another, oh, it's perfect. Knuckles, like movie 2 and his own TV show, is just such a joy. In every scene, he's just pure fucking comedic gold, and the way they talk about him shows a clear understanding on how to write the character. Quote, he wasn't comedic, it was just that what he said was so matter of fact, and we started leaning into that. Hell, even in scenes where he needs to be serious, most notably with his argument with Sonic after Tom's put out of commission, the way he just respects their friendship by not fighting Sonic, even though Knuckles has been characterized as someone who jumps into a brawl at any chance he gets. Hell, this characterization was even shown off earlier in the movie when he first met Shadow. All I'm saying is this scene wouldn't have hit nearly as hard with anybody else except Knuckles. And honestly, Tails and Knuckles do something I'd never expect from the games to do. Interact. Sure, in Final Horizons, they talked in one cutscene, mostly just to re-establish his Tails' arc for the game. But outside of that, name one time Tails and Knuckles have interacted in a mainline game where they're not just talking about the current situation. The most recent is most likely Heroes, maybe even 06, but still, those are games that are over 15 years old. And during the third act, we not only see them interact, but we see them save Sonic via the knowledge only those two would have of their friendship, being a callback to the baseball game at the end of Sonic 2. Again, whilst these two weren't the most plot relevant compared to pretty much anyone else in the cast, these two are still on their A game, both being highlights throughout. Okay, time to just start straight up glazing. Out of all the characters these movies have hyped up via a post-credit scene, none has had me more excited than Shadow the Hedgehog. Based on Jeff Fowler's history with Shadow, with him tweeting out when the first trailer released that he was honoured to bring Shadow the Hedgehog to the big screen, he must have made it his fucking mission for this guy to be cool. And fuck me, did he pull it off. They don't force it with him trying to do overused lines or make him let edgy, they just let him go off. 3v1ing Team Sonic, doing the Akira slide up the side of a building, punching the fucking Chaos Emeralds out of Super Sonic? Bro was straight aura farming in this movie at every chance he possibly got. And my god, am I happy to see this generation of kids get to experience Shadow the same way I did, as this fucking powerhouse who deserves to be taken seriously. And God's sake, Keanu did such a good job. I and everyone else was scared shitless about his performance turning out when we got the Shadow Generations movie DLC giving us, frankly, just an awful performance.
A beautiful city.
Yeah.
It looks like how Maria described the Earth.
I don't really know what caused this. Based on a PlayStation blog about the DLC, it seems like Keanu was working with Sega and probably having to go through their poor voice direction, leading it to being what we got. That or he didn't give a fuck about this small movie tie-in. Really, either or. Either way, when it comes to his performance in the movie, it's a lot better. Not to say it's flawless or anything. I feel like in places like him talking to Maria, his facial expressions are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, with his voice truly not selling it for me. But again, in scenes like where he's talking to Sonic near the end of the movie,
The last time I sat beneath stars like this, I was with her.
that hits, man. That fucking hits. Obviously, when it comes to the action scenes, he's killing it in every line.
Now you know my anger. The pain I've felt for 50 years.
So for the most part, he's solid, with the offline hero there, similar to Knuckles in movie 2. As well as not only getting his coolness right, they also really understand his pain and attempt to paint him more as a troubled character than an outright villain. Hell, this is probably one of the best versions of Shadow and Maria's relationship. In Adventure 2, Maria's not really a character and works something similar to like Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. You know, someone who gives powerful advice which pushes the character to do the right thing. It took us till like a couple months ago to really get to know her as a character. In the movies, however, whilst vague on why this version of Maria's here, as this version doesn't even have an illness, with them just hand-waving it away with them saying Gerald just takes her everywhere, we at the very least get a cute montage seeing Shadow and Maria bond. You know, dancing, watching a movie, seeing how Shadow's powers work. You know, just the two of them being kids, having a lot of fun. Leading to when they show us near the end of the movie how she died. It truly allows us to understand the pain of what Shadow's going through. Whilst at the end of the day this is Sonic, it's gonna be a kids film, especially compared to the last two. This film feels like it's a lot more mature in a couple angles, especially with Shadow. Also, while they obviously couldn't do what they did in the game and just straight out shoot her, the fact that if Walters never intervened they would have just straight shot her is also just kind of wild. Also, for some reason they did make some lore changes to Shadow, which I only imagine was made to keep the movie universe lore intact. Unlike the games where Shadow is a collaborative effort between Gerald and Black Doom, here in the movies it's stated that Shadow just showed up in a meteorite. That's all we get. A part of me believes they kept it so vague, as if they ever wanted to make a Shadow solo project similar to Knuckles. They wouldn't need to contradict anything and have that solo project just go into more details. Now moving on to our last major characters, Ivo and Gerald Robotnik. Now, when this movie was first announced back in 2022, it was already kind of unclear if Jim Carrey was returning, as he'd already said he was planning to retire. I was kind of doubtful due to him announcing this during the Sonic 2 interviews. You know, a press tour. I was so expecting after Sonic 2 was already out on like DVD, Blu-ray, he'd state he had second thoughts and he planned to come back. Although not really directly after Sonic 2. When Sonic 3's title treatment was shown off, it came as a dual announcement with Jim Carrey officially returning. And when the first trailer dropped, it was also revealed he wouldn't just be playing Eggman, but also his grandfather, Gerald Robotnik. When I saw this and also what I stated in my predictions for movie 3, I thought he was just trying to go out with one big bombastic bang and truly have this be his final film. And I can't lie, out of anyone, he kind of did feel like the main star of movie 3, yeah, even more than Shadow. Especially during the middle chunk of the movie, he's clearly the most centered character. Gerald and Ivo's first encounter, the key life event montage, and the dance scene in the vault really just made me feel like Jeff Fowler went, okay Jim, just do whatever the fuck you want. And as well, under the mindset of this being Jim Carrey's final movie, I was fine with him having so much screen time as he did, since I kind of expected this to go similar to the games with Shadow. Like, even if similar to the games, they act like Shadow's died, I kind of expected them to kind of bring him back. Like, it's Keanu Reeves, you don't just kill him off, bro. Although, discussing the characters themselves, I'm a little mixed on it. Eggman is exactly like he was in the previous films, just being Jim Carrey trying to recapture the same effect as his 90 roles. And again, like before, it's still pretty charming. I'm happy in the third act they just kind of went fuck it and actually just gave him the modern Eggman look. It allows his transformation throughout the movies to finally feel finished here. If I had any complaint, it'd be that Sonic 2 showed him falling to his death that, let's be real, should have killed him. Cut to movie 3 and we find out he's all fine and well, just becoming a bit of a slob. You know, letting his hair grow out and just getting fatter. Okay, but how did he survive though? What do you mean they cut out the explanation? So it turns out on Sonic 3's home digital release, which comes with some bonus deleted scenes, one of these scenes named Stone Saves Ivo is a 1-minute scene during when Team Sonic first meets up with Robotnik, was just a scene of Stone saving Ivo from the wreckage of the Death Egg robot. If I were to guess, it got cut for the streamer line at the end since that whole plot thread just got entirely erased. But again, this is still pretty significant info that the final film just left out for some reason. Gerald, on the other hand, well, he's quite a different take on the character. Well, for starters, he's still kicking. Apparently it was explained he's still alive due to Shadow's quill he's holding, which, again, isn't explained in the movie. I kinda sussed out, even before the film came out, that he was actually just being silly to get Eggman to work with him, and he would probably become more mask-off evil in the third act. But even in the third act, they find it hard to just stop the silliness and take him seriously. Before this point, I feel like they found a good balance between the jokes and the scenes that need to take themselves more seriously. Usually just being when Shadow's the focus and all jokes will be put on hold, with the only two outliers being the revenge guac and
Gabriella should kill them both.
outside of those two silly lines, we keep a pretty good balance. But in the third act, the slapstick jokes are still going, even though the tone is seriously dire right now. To give you a better picture, Sonic's just gone super to pretty much kill Shadow for almost killing Tom, with both Sonic and Shadow going super and fighting brutally, kind of fucking up the planet in the process. But we'll cut back to Ivo and Gerald where they're just doing goofy off fight scenes and it's all just complete jokes. This doesn't really help as the scene that just took place before this is Gerald going completely mask off, revealing his real plan to Ivo, where he won't just use the Eclipse Cannon to evaporate the Earth, but also himself. Yet Gerald and Shadow's plan is fucking dark, man. With Ivo now truly experiencing the love of family, trying to be reasonable here, Gerald's just cutthroat, just saying,
Oh, Ivo, you're no Maria.
holy shit. And again, after one serious Sonic and Shadow fight later, he's just back to being silly again. I don't think I need to say this, but this is in stark contrast to Gerald in the games. Gerald in the games is a very tragic character, just wanting to help the world and save his granddaughter in the process. But due to events out of his control, with some of his experiments going berserk, it led to the infamous gun raid, killing any leads to Project Shadow, including Maria. When Gerald found out about this, he lost his mind, altering pieces of Shadow's memories to act out his own revenge. And when all 7 Chaos Emeralds are now put into the Eclipse Cannon, it activates Gerald's Doomsday Plan, which will hurl the Ark towards the Earth as a way to avenge Maria. For the most part, I was fine with this new take on Gerald being a front, but even though after his mask off scene he still jokes, that's when I start to have a problem. Although his death scene is fucking cinema. Firing Squad or Death Like a Buzz Zapper, pick your fucking poison, Gerald fans. Now, compared to both movie 1 and 2, all the humans you'd come to expect from these movies, Tom, Maddie, Rachel, my lord and saviour, all have kind of been intentionally sidelined, only really getting the second act of the movie to shine. I feel like after movie 2's problem of having way too much stuff going on, they've more or less tried to scale back by having such a small main cast of characters. Like, there's no real B-plot in Sonic 3, it's just purely focused on Team Sonic versus Team Robotnik and Shadow, like all the posters and the trailers advertise. And again, during the gun heist, which is during the second act of the movie, is where a majority of their screen time is. And due to the fact everybody's here participating, it doesn't just feel like padding and just them getting the spotlight for a bit until they're rolled back in for the third act. And just let the Sonic vs. Shadow stuff the movie's always been about reach its climax. Hell, even though Randall and Rachel got posters, they technically are not even in the movie, just being Tom and Maddie disguised, and yes, this does mean Tom did this. Also, on a side note, I can't believe Shadow the Hedgehog can't hold a real gun, but my goat Wade Whipple can. He stays the goat, he's on top! As well as the previous movies, we've got a bunch more human characters to add to the bunch. The biggest being Director Rockwell, played by Christian Ritter. Don't do a Breaking Bad bit, don't do a Breaking Bad bit, don't do a Breaking Bad bit. I watched Maria die. She's the only real character in the movie I'd say came off as underutilized. They set her up as someone who has some sort of prejudice against Team Sonic, and when she believes they were the ones who attacked Walters, she jumps at the chance to lock them up. And yes, Commander Walters is dead. Can we get some S in the chat for Olive Garden guy?
Olive Garden guy?
I'm gonna miss him, guys. Sonic 4's not gonna be the same without it. But after the gun heist, where they don't even arrest them after the Vault shenanigans end, Tom just pretends to be Commander Walters to get the key, and that's it. That's it. We just never see her again after that. It feels like we only got 2/3 of a character arc, and we didn't see the ending where she'd come around to trusting them, but I don't know, maybe they'll explore more in a Paramount Plus show or something like they did for Wade. Whilst editing the video, I just realised I never brought up little Tom once. I'm gonna do an Eclipse Cannon level crash out. Also, for some reason, Movie 3, weirdly enough, has quite a lot of inconsistencies based on what Movie 2 already set up. Like how at the end of Sonic 2, we saw Sonic send the Chaos Emerald away, yet Knuckles is still able to remake the Master Emerald as if they're two separate entities now. But cut to Movie 3 and nope, the Chaos Emeralds are just back inside the Master Emerald like nothing ever happened. Okay. Also, I specifically noted in my original video that they may retcon how Gun was filmed, as Shadow's backstory obviously has a lot to do with Gun, yet Movie 2 already states that Gun was made because of Movie 1's events, you know, not that long ago. Although based on how they're going to do Shadow for Sonic 3, I feel like they wrote themselves into a hole with Gun being created now. Because Gun is a key player in Shadow's backstory, so I don't know if they're going to retcon it and say Gun existed this whole time, but it was top secret. But in Movie 3, they're all here in the flashbacks, even though again, they stated that Gun was filmed due to Movie 1 and ignore like they ever said that. Also, it's kind of bizarre how the Knuckles show made it very clear that Gun is this high-ranked secret operation due to Wanda, an FBI agent, not even knowing about its existence. Yet, in Movie 3, they have a massive fuck-off building in the middle of London right next to shit like Big Ben. Like, this shit's not even Saw, they've got massive laser defenses around the building. Hey, they blew up the moon in this film. What's your bets they're going to forget that in the next one? Hey, you say they won't forget, but remember, Sega did for 20 years. Whilst on the topic of the games, of course, like previously, we do get some more game elements and some more references inserted within the movie. The most notable being Shadow's first encounter with Team Sonic, with it featuring a lot of iconography from his own solo game. Using a gun, riding the bike, literally copying the ending sequence of that CGI opening. Just goes to show how much love they had for the character of Shadow. There's also some smaller stuff like Chow's officially being introduced as these restaurant mascots. And honestly, I'm so down for shit like this. I don't really care anymore about these films being game accurate. Honestly, I'm just here for a fun time, and stuff like this is exactly what I'm talking about. Also, weird how every single one of these movies and TV shows have had these guys in a bar or a restaurant. Is it like contractually obligated or something? Also, I like since there's no conceivable way of having the Bio-Lizard exist in this film's continuity, they just made him some King Kong style monster for an in-universe movie. I think that's pretty neat. I think the main thing I like about these sorts of references is that they don't feel forced in and just more of an extra to a pre-existing scene. Like, I can imagine Jeff sitting with the writers about the restaurant scene and just going, okay, but what if we made it Chow? It's similar to what I said about this movie changing SA2's plot a bit. It makes it fun for longtime fans of the series, but also just newcomers who don't really know what these sorts of things are. Now, like previously, I'll just hop around some smaller topics before hitting stuff like the third act. For starters, the CGI and VFX was next level in this movie. I don't feel like there's a single shot where these characters look out of place, where in comparison to the previous movie, there were some dodgy shots, especially when CG characters and humans were physically interacting. Also, we're so lucky to have someone like Jeff Fowler directing these movies and know how CG works. Because I'm surprised how impressive the fight scenes looks for a movie with a budget of $122 million. To give you guys a hint, that's a very small budget for these types of movies. Also, this movie, unlike Movie 2, actually looks like a movie! Movie 1 was shot pretty standardly with a very warm colour grading. Movie 2 was shot and colour graded like ass, with humans clearly on blue screens, and the whole final battle looking like your average Marvel movie, most likely suffering from COVID restrictions. Movie 3 is shot really well and has a very atmospheric colour grading to it. Hey, it looks ugly when they're in London. This movie's so realistic. If I were to to nitpick anything, I'd just say that the scene at the very start of the movie with Shadow surfing on the water kinda looked better in the first trailer than the final film. I'm just saying, overall the movie is just very well made. Like, it's not super artsy or anything, but there's clearly a lot of effort in the set. Like the Eclipse cannon, the crab mech, or even the flashbacks of the lab looks unique and colourful. The OST as well, compared to the previous film's lack of video game music, outside of the drowning jingle for like half a second, it's about 1000% better here. For starters, this movie fucking loves Live and Learn. They use it for the title card, Sonic and Shadow going super, them fighting together. Hell, they made it Shadow's leitmotif throughout the whole movie. Whilst this movie is nowhere near giving us as many game songs like the Mario movie, for example, movie 3 is instead being more precise and seemingly just focusing on tracks from Adventure 2. They do just play Eggman's 06 theme during a scene, but I don't know if that's intentional or a coincidence. But they do add all the ones you'd come to expect from Sonic Adventure 2. Again, Live and Learn, City Escape, hell, even playing Eggman's theme for a quick gag. And dude, the minute I realised the ending was using the exact same song as SA2's final scene, it was beautiful, let me tell you. Another cute nod is that most of the songs during the movie's OST is named after a quote or a phrase from SA2. Although, to be real, I can't lie and say some of the original tracks for this film are kind of fire, especially during the end. Dude, the track Last Story from 3 minutes 20 seconds till the end gives me chills. It is so fucking good, man. Overall, I feel this movie's OST is at a point where I'm satisfied with what we got. I get it, due to licensing, it's hard to get every track in the world, but at the very least, we got all the iconic ones. And hell, shit like the final scene near the end just felt like a sweet cherry on top. Now, moving on to the third act, and man, it's peak. There's no better way to put it. Aside from the few issues I have with Gerald, I have no real issues with the finale. It's anything I could have wanted for a movie adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic and Shadow kicking the shit out of each other in their super forms is honestly probably one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen on a cinema screen. Sonic punching Shadow not only out of his super form but straight to the fucking moon is not only such a wild move in and of itself, but it's just the insane fighting I love from this series. And I really do love the way Shadow's redeemed in this film. Of course, in the games it's due to Amy accidentally paralleling Maria's final words, but here in the movie it's Sonic trying to help Shadow grieve Maria's loss as he also lost Longclaw. And the way the movie treats the ideas such as lost is quite mature, honestly. Sonic stating the pain of the loss won't truly go away, but what Shadow does need to do is hold on the love that they did have for one another. Platonically, of course. I do feel we are kind of repeating the scene with Knuckles on the beach, but it was kind of inevitable as they're both villains that turn to heroes by the end of the plot. But dude, Sonic and Shadow doing the craziest dap me up whilst Live and Learn starts playing in the background. Cinema! Dude, fucking cinema! Then seeing the two fight against gun robots in this insane one-shot with it ending with the classic SA2 pose. They fucking won! No nitpick or issue I ever could have had could have killed the fucking hype this scene caused me, and literally every other Sonic fan on the planet to have. It's simply crazy to think that we're here, and now we're here. Fucking wow. Anyway, after the death of Gerald, rest in peace, King, it's now up to Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and now Shadow and Eggman to steer the cannon away from the Earth. I do find it interesting how this is the way the moon got split in the movies. I mean, in the games, they only broke off a chunk, but here we're splitting it straight in two. But once Sonic's out of his super form, it's officially endgame for everyone. Whilst Tails and Knuckles go off to save Sonic, Shadow and Eggman do what they can to move the cannon away from the Earth, whilst knowing very much it may cause their demise. Shadow takes off his limiter rings, which honestly you wouldn't really know the meaning of if you weren't a Sonic fan, as they never really went into detail on what they are. But Eggman is where this shit gets fucking real, pushing off the explosions caused by the chaos energy, and doing the classic "I've come to make an announcement," but changing the context entirely. Instead of threatening the Earth, he just wants to do one final thing: to thank Agent Stone. Whilst I haven't mentioned him much throughout these videos, he's been one of the highlights throughout all these movies and has stayed by Robotnik's side through thick and thin. Seeing 5 years later Robotnik thanking Stone for everything he did for him, with Shadow remembering Maria as he pushes the cannon as far as he can and as fast as he can, it's all so perfect. That's not to mention seeing Knuckles coming in the last minute to save his brothers. And then we end on not only Eggman's final line, but Jim Carrey's possible final line in his acting career.
So, I guess there's only one thing left to say. It's been a real drag.
Thanks for nothing.
We then come back to Team Sonic in a crop field, seeing the big effects of the cannon's explosion. Of course, Sonic apologizes to Tails and Knuckles for running away before the third act, whilst probably unintentional. Having a Sonic Boom reference of all things?
Chuck another one up for Team Sonic.
How about just team?
Team Sonic?
How about just team?
Although with Team Sonic reunited and Tom out of the hospital, really a cast? Shadow put you in the coma and all you get is a broken arm. We end just as we started, with Team Sonic racing one another right into the sunset, officially cutting this film to a close. Of course, that's not technically everything. Like the last two, we've got two post-credit scenes setting up the future of the Sonic movie universe. I'll talk about the second first, mostly because it's less interesting and little to talk about. It just shows one of Shadow's limiter rings in a crater, with Shadow's shoe coming into frame to pick it up, aka Shadow's alive. I can see this kind of making his death feel a bit more like a fake out, but it was kind of obvious he was going to come back. Not only is he voiced by Keanu Reeves, but he's literally one of the most popular Sonic characters aside from Sonic himself. So yeah, they're not just killing him off, so I kind of respect them for just ripping the band-aid off and showing it now, and not waiting till a future movie where people will claim it's a cash grab for bringing him back. The other scene, on the other hand, is a lot more intriguing, catching back up with Sonic and the whole race, with him apparently overshooting the finish line all the way to New York State Park. This leads to none other than the reveal of Metal Sonic, attempting to get the jump on Sonic before needing to call for backup, with the reveal of not one Metal Sonic, but a whole army of them. But just when it seems dire, a hammer glowing pink saves Sonic at the very last second, revealed to be wielded by none other than the one and only Amy Rose. This will of course lead into the next movie, Sonic the Hedgehog 4, which, crazy enough, already has a logo and a release date of March 19th, 2027. Obviously, nothing really stated on what we should expect from this movie except it'll focus on Amy and Metal Sonic. I'm aware there's some concept art for movie 3 that got revealed of this fucked up bad future with some sort of Emperor Eggman. But again, this is just concept art. Who knows when this art was made during its development and if they'd still pursue the idea now. I don't think it's too far of a guess that the movie will most likely adapt either Sonic CD or Sonic Heroes, as that's Metal's main big stories. If I were to throw my take on the wall, I imagine it'll be somewhat based on Terminator, based on the way Metal Sonic first appeared, with Amy maybe coming back to the past to make sure Sonic's alive or something. I've never seen Terminator, you can probably tell. And I don't know, the main Metal Sonic will probably turn into Neo Metal Sonic or the Metal Overlord by the third act, depending on which one they want to use. It's hard to say who will create Metal Sonic, as Eggman is dead now. Oh wait. So, remember how Jim Carrey was kind of more or less clear that he was kind of done with acting? Well, I honestly have no real idea on how they're going to pull this off without undercutting his sacrifice here. If anything, I'd hope they do something similar to like Archie or something, where they bring in an alternate universe Eggman, or have Neo Metal Sonic disguise himself as Eggman, or fuck it, if they really need to, maybe retcon something so between movie 2 and 3 he like uploaded his brain to some hard drive or something so he could be recreated as a clone. I know it's bizarre as shit, but at least we get an Eggman and it keeps the death intact. And before you say, well, what if Paramount doesn't want to bring back Jim Carrey? Because trust me, they do. Throughout all the reviews for Sonic Movie 3, the main thing critics raved about is how fun Jim Carrey was as playing both Ivo and Gerald. So now that Jim's shown interest in coming back, they're probably going to jump at the chance to get him back. On the subject of the future, there's nothing really else officially announced outside of Movie 4. I imagine if there was meant to be another spin-off like the Knuckles show that would come out before Movie 4, I feel like they would have announced it before or alongside Sonic 4, similar to how they announced Sonic Movie 3 and Knuckles at the same time. But that's not to say spin-offs can't happen in general. I know there's rumours about a Shadow solo project, which is kind of a no-brainer. I'd rather it be a movie than a TV show like Knuckles, because then we can actually have the budget to have Shadow throughout its entire runtime. That's not to throw shade at Knuckles, of course. If they announced a season 2, I'd scream to the highest heavens in excitement. I do just kind of want to put it out there as a prediction, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sonic 4 makes less money than Sonic Movie 3. Like, the fact they treated this one like such an event, like the culmination of a trilogy, I can't really see that working a second time. And the fact these movies have acted like this is Jim Carrey's last movie twice now, I don't think people will be fooled a third time. Not saying it'll majorly flop or anything, but after almost 2 months, Sonic 3's only made about $470 million as of writing and recording this part. I feel Movie 4 will make something closer to Movie 3, so something like $425 million, give or take. And due to the fact that Movie 4's only only in pre-production, I felt now's my only real opportunity to give these guys what I want for the next installment. Okay, for starters, we sideline all the Metal and Amy stuff. I know it sounds hard, but just hear me out on this. And then Wade Whipple comes in and it's revealed that Pistol Pete is back to become the bowling champion once more. But with that said, I think we're done. Again, Sonic Movie 3 was so great. It was a beautiful love letter to the games they're adapting, but makes changes to allow itself to stand as its own thing. And it's also crazy how far we've come. 5 years after this video's release, Sonic Movie 1 released. Started out by looking like an absolute dumpster fire, yet it ended up changing the trajectory of this franchise forever. And now look at us 5 years later, we're truly in the best timeline for Sonic content. Now that we're officially looking back with a full trilogy, and Knuckles, it's fair to say these movies have their fair share of flaws, but when they find their element, it's like falling in love with Sonic all over again. Whilst again, I am a little doubtful of movie 4 reaching the same if not higher heights than movie 3, all I can really ask for is it to be a good time, which these movies have yet to fail at. I understand we can't have every movie as this insane hype fest like movie 3, but if I can go in and just have a good time with these interpretation of characters I've come to love, then I'll be satisfied. But my god, now that we've seen what they can do when they lock in, I'm ecstatic for what this future holds for the movie universe. Thank you all so much for watching. All I have left to say is, we've turned it up high, we've dropped it low, and we'll do this everywhere we go. Yeah, I'm ending this video on a Run It reference, we're so bad!